I am Dr. Smith, and I am 80 years old, giving health advice drawn from a lifetime of medicine, observation, and lived experience. I still walk every morning. I still lift light weights. I still enjoy my food. And I still maintain a lean body composition not because of genetics or discipline alone, but because I learned early on how the body truly burns fat and what gets in its way. Today I want to talk to you about the #1 fastest way to burn body fat. Not the loudest way, not the trendiest way. The fastest way that actually works in the real world and keeps working as the years go by. Most people think fat loss starts with a complicated plan. They assume it requires extreme dieting, exhausting workouts, or cutting out entire food groups. That belief alone keeps them stuck. The truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable for some to hear. The fastest way to burn body fat is not adding something new. It is removing the most obvious mistakes you already know you are making and doing it consistently long enough for your biology to respond. When I sit with a patient who wants to get lean, I don't start with macros, supplements, or training programs. I start with what I call the 30,000-foot view. I ask one question. What do you already know you're doing that isn't helping you? Are you drinking alcohol most nights? Are you ending your evenings with sweets out of habit, not hunger? Are you grazing mindlessly while stressed or tired? Almost everyone knows at least 2 things they could change immediately without learning anything new. Those changes are powerful because they remove the biggest metabolic obstacles first. And here is what surprises people. When you remove the biggest offenders, fat loss often begins quickly. Not because your body suddenly becomes efficient, but because you stop interfering with it. The human body is exceptionally good at regulating weight when it is not constantly overwhelmed by excess calories, sugar, alcohol, and poor sleep. Early fat loss is often dramatic simply because those habits were driving most of the problem. Now let's talk about the hidden offenders, because this is where people struggle the most. Sugar is an obvious one, but not just desserts. Sugar hides in foods marketed as healthy, flavored yogurts, instant oatmeal packets, protein bars, sauces, condiments. I've watched intelligent, motivated people sabotage fat loss for years because they believed the label instead of the ingredients. Sugar is not essential, your body does not require it, and it has a unique ability to override satiety, making you want more before your brain registers fullness. Carbohydrates deserve special attention here, not because they are evil, but because they are easy to overconsume. Most people do not accidentally eat 5 steaks. They do accidentally eat 2 full servings of pasta, rice, or bread without realizing it. Carbohydrates are chemically pleasing. They digest quickly, they reward the brain, and portion sizes creep up quietly. This is one of the fastest ways visceral fat accumulates. Visceral fat, the fat deep in the abdomen around your organs, responds more to insulin than to calories alone. Repeated spikes in insulin signal storage. And carbohydrates, especially refined ones, are the most reliable way to spike insulin repeatedly throughout the day. This does not mean carbohydrates must be eliminated. It means they must be respected. Portion awareness alone can dramatically accelerate fat loss. Now let me tell you what I personally look for when I turn a food label around. I look at 3 things, every single time: sugar, fat, and protein. Sugar, because it is unnecessary and easy to overconsume. Fat, because it is calorie-dense, carrying more than double the calories per gram compared to protein or carbohydrates. And protein, because it is the single most important nutrient for fat loss. Protein does 3 things that make it essential if you want to burn fat quickly. First, it preserves lean muscle. When you lose weight without enough protein, a significant portion of that weight comes from muscle. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. Lose it, and fat loss becomes harder, not easier. Second, protein increases satiety. Meals high in protein make you feel full sooner and for longer. This naturally reduces total calorie intake without conscious restriction. Third, protein slightly increases energy expenditure through digestion. It costs your body more energy to process protein than carbohydrates or fat. If I could give only one nutritional instruction to someone trying to burn fat quickly, it would be this: prioritize protein at every meal, not occasionally, every meal. When protein is present, the entire hormonal response to that meal changes. Now, let's talk about how meals should be structured. The fastest way to burn body fat is not skipping meals. It is removing chaos from eating. Chaos drives overeating. Predictability stabilizes hormones. I encourage people to eat regular meals anchored by protein, followed by fibrous vegetables, and then carbohydrates if desired. That order matters. Protein and fiber slow digestion. They flatten glucose curves. They reduce insulin spikes. The same meal eaten in a different order produces a completely different metabolic response. Late-night eating deserves its own discussion. Eating close to bedtime is one of the most underestimated barriers to fat loss. When you eat late, your body prioritizes digestion over recovery. Heart rate remains elevated. Sleep quality suffers. Insulin sensitivity is lower at night, meaning more of that energy is stored as fat. Over time, this pattern drives visceral fat accumulation. The fastest way to improve fat loss for many people is simply stopping food intake earlier in the evening. Now let's talk about training. Because exercise matters, but not in the way most people think. The fastest way to burn body fat is not endless cardio. It is resistance training combined with a calorie deficit created primarily through nutrition. Lifting weights sends a powerful signal to the body: preserve muscle. When that signal is present, the body preferentially burns fat. Without it, muscle loss accelerates, metabolism slows, and fat loss stalls. That said, movement outside the gym matters just as much. Walking is profoundly underrated. Daily walking lowers stress hormones, improves insulin sensitivity, and increases total energy expenditure without triggering hunger the way intense exercise sometimes does. For visceral fat in particular, regular walking combined with protein-focused meals is remarkably effective. Now we need to talk about consistency, because this is where most plans fail. The fastest way to burn body fat is not doing everything perfectly. It is doing the right things consistently enough for the body to trust the pattern. The body resists rapid, extreme change. It adapts beautifully to steady signals. When nutrition, movement, and sleep follow predictable rhythms, fat loss becomes almost automatic. People often ask about stubborn lower belly fat. They point to it and ask why it remains, even when the rest of the body leans out. This is not a mystery. In men especially, the lower abdomen is the first place fat is stored and the last place it is lost. There is no exercise that targets fat loss in one area. Sit-ups do not burn belly fat. Diet consistency does. Fat loss occurs in a top-down pattern. Face first, upper body next, lower abdomen last. By the time lower belly fat begins to disappear, many people feel they look too lean elsewhere. Facial fat loss, especially with age, can be uncomfortable psychologically. This is where maturity comes in. You must decide what level of leanness is worth the trade-off. At around 10 to 12% body fat for men and a healthy equivalent range for women, nearly all health benefits of leanness are achieved. Insulin sensitivity improves. Cardiovascular risk decreases. Energy and mobility improve. Chasing further leanness requires increasing sacrifice for diminishing returns. The fastest way to burn body fat is not obsessing over perfection. It is choosing a sustainable endpoint. Now let me address calories in versus calories out, because this is often misunderstood. Yes, a calorie deficit is required for fat loss, but not all calorie deficits produce the same result. A deficit created by protein-rich, minimally processed foods preserves muscle and targets fat. A deficit created by junk food leads to muscle loss, hormonal disruption, and poor body composition. The scale may move, but the mirror tells a different story. If someone were to eat processed snacks in a calorie deficit, they might lose weight, but they would also lose strength, muscle tone, and metabolic health. This is why quality matters. The fastest way to burn body fat is creating a deficit your body can tolerate without activating defense mechanisms. Sleep cannot be ignored. Poor sleep elevates cortisol. Cortisol promotes fat storage in the abdomen. Sleep deprivation increases hunger hormones and reduces impulse control. I have seen people fix their diet and exercise and still struggle with fat loss because sleep remained chaotic. The routine of sleep matters as much as the duration. Going to bed and waking up at consistent times stabilizes metabolic hormones. Some people can function on less sleep due to genetics, but they are rare. Most people underestimate how much poor sleep slows fat loss. If you do nothing else, protect your sleep routine. It accelerates every other fat loss strategy. So, let me bring this together clearly. The number one fastest way to burn body fat is removing the biggest obstacles and replacing them with a simple, repeatable structure. Eliminate obvious excesses. Reduce sugar. Control carbohydrate portions. Prioritize protein. Eat earlier. Lift weights. Walk daily. Sleep consistently. Do this without drama. Fat loss is not about punishment. It is about alignment. When your habits align with your biology, fat loss follows naturally. At 80 years old, I can tell you this with certainty. The body wants to be lean and healthy. It only resists when we confuse it. If you are listening to this and feeling overwhelmed, start small. Remove one obvious offender. Add protein to one meal. Walk 10 minutes more per day. Eat dinner 1 hour earlier. Momentum builds quickly when friction is reduced. The fastest way to burn body fat is not chasing extremes. It is respecting fundamentals and repeating them long enough for the body to respond. That is how you lose visceral fat. That is how you stay lean. And that is how you build a body that serves you well for decades, not just a season. I have lived long enough to see what works and what fails. Trends fade. Biology does not. Work with it, and it will reward you. As we close, I want to leave you with something practical, not inspirational fluff. Fat loss does not require willpower equal to suffering. It requires clarity. When you clearly see which habits are helping you and which are quietly working against you, the path forward becomes obvious. Most people already know what their biggest obstacles are. Alcohol, late-night eating, sugary foods, oversized portions, chaotic schedules. Remove those first, and you will often see more progress in a few weeks than from months of complicated plans. The body responds quickly when the noise is removed. The second piece of advice is to respect sustainability. The fastest way to burn body fat is not the most extreme approach. It is the approach you can repeat without burning out. A plan that forces you to give up everything you enjoy will eventually collapse. A plan that allows flexibility while maintaining structure will last. Protein at every meal, mindful portions of carbohydrates, regular movement, and consistent sleep are boring, yes, but they work every time when done consistently. Third, understand that visceral fat is especially sensitive to insulin and stress. Repeated blood sugar spikes and chronically elevated cortisol tell the body to store fat deep in the abdomen. When you flatten glucose curves with better food choices and reduce stress through sleep and walking, visceral fat becomes metabolically vulnerable. This is why many people notice waistlines shrinking, even when the scale barely moves. That is not failure. That is progress where it matters most. Finally, be patient with your body as you age. Fat loss patterns change over time, and trade-offs become more noticeable. You may lose fat from your face before your waist. You may need to choose between extreme leanness and comfort. Health is not defined by perfection. At a healthy body fat level, you gain energy, mobility, metabolic resilience, and confidence. That is the real goal, a body that works for you, not one you fight against. To summarize simply, remove the obvious mistakes first. Control sugar and portions. Prioritize protein. Lift weights. Walk daily. Eat earlier, and protect your sleep. Do those things consistently, and fat loss follows naturally. That is the fastest way to burn body fat, and it is available to anyone willing to respect the fundamentals. If this helped you today, give this video a like so it reaches more people who need clear, honest health advice. Subscribe to the channel for more evidence-based guidance on losing visceral fat, staying lean, and aging well. And share this with someone who's been frustrated by fat loss but hasn't been told the truth about what actually works. I'll see you in the next one.